most confusing things about an abusive man is that you keep waiting for this moment where he finally sees it, right? Where he looks at you and he knows what he did and he says, "Oh my God, I love you. I hurt you. I see it now. I understand why I was wrong and I know that I need to change." And that moment usually never comes, right? Or it comes, but for 5 minutes. And then it disappears the second accountability actually costs him anything. Because the part that so many women are just not prepared for is that some people will do harmful things and they don't experience those behaviors as harmful to them. And that's why they don't see it as a problem, because the control feels justified, right? Entitlement is just normal. Of course they're entitled. Manipulation feels, necessary. So they don't have a lack of empathy, and that just seems reasonable to them because you deserve to be punished, because they're only reacting to you, right? So when you say to an abusive man, "Do you not see what you're doing? Do you not see that you're hurting me?" He might see it, but he just believes that he's right. Now, in this video, I want to explain 2 psychological concepts, ego-syntonic and ego-dystonic, in plain English, because they really explain why some abusive men and some people with very strong personality disorder traits are actually so hard to reach, why change is harder than survivors actually expect, and why your pain alone is not enough to make an abusive man care. Now, I'm not diagnosing anyone here. I will always say narcissism is a personality trait, and narcissistic personality disorder is a clinical disorder that requires a diagnosis. But I want to use these concepts educationally, and I'm applying them broadly to abusive behavior, entitlement, and coercive control. My name is Lisa Sonni. I'm a certified relationship coach, and I'm an expert in toxic and abusive relationships. I specialize in trauma bonds, personality disorders, the patriarchy, and I speak really through a feminist lens. My content is for women who are exiting abusive relationships and really want to learn how to break free, come back to themselves, and not be with men like this. Okay, so let's start with ego-syntonic. Basically, that means this feels normal to me, okay? It feels consistent with how someone sees themselves. So it feels justified and normal and reasonable to them, right? Like, this is just how I am. And let's be honest, you've heard that before, right? This is just how I am. This is how the world works. This is how men are. So if you have a problem with my behavior, that's your problem. And I think that is truly one of the parts that makes it so confusing, because this is not a man who's walking around going, "Yeah, I'm controlling, absolutely." He might be thinking, "I'm setting rules because she needs rules." He doesn't think he's manipulating you. He just thinks, "I'm doing what I have to do to get her to understand or to get the result that I want that serves me." His behavior fits his own self-image. So he doesn't feel this, internal alarm. He doesn't feel what you feel when you say something is wrong. He just doesn't see it that way. Now, ego-dystonic, that means this feels wrong to me, right? The behavior feels uncomfortable. It feels like there's an internal kind of conflict. It feels unaligned with the person that you believe yourself to be. So there's this discomfort in it. There's this sense of, I don't want to be this way, or I need to look at my part, or maybe I'm contributing to this problem. And this is where change becomes possible. So this is the kind of person that would be open to change. The person feels tension between their values and their behavior. And you see that a lot with the victims and survivors of abusive relationships. But in any person, they are bothered by what they did. They might feel shame, they might feel regret or concern, and they're not performing these things, they actually feel them. So they use the discomfort that they feel to reflect and repair and basically change, right? But if someone experiences their behavior that's harmful as justified, then that discomfort doesn't really exist. It rarely exists. So this really explains why we keep hitting a wall when we're trying to explain this to an abusive man, right? You think the problem is that he doesn't understand. That is the most common thing. Women are constantly telling me in sessions with me, "He just doesn't understand." I see in the comments, no, you don't understand. My guy, he's dumb. He doesn't understand. But then you explain harder and you give examples, and women do this thing where they're like, "Okay, imagine you're at work," and they start to give him an example that fits his life, because you think if you make it something to do with his job or his family, we do this like, imagine you had a daughter, right? And we're trying to get him to make it make sense. You send him articles, you send him my videos. Don't do that. They never listen. You describe your feelings, you beg, you cry, you break it down, you plead with him, you use I feel statements. You're trying to use the active listening skills that you learned in therapy, but this guy's not taking it in. It never happens, right? And you think he's missing information or you need to explain it better or love him harder. But no, it just doesn't work with a man like this because his behavior makes sense. He believes that, his control of you is protection, let's say, or he's not jealous, he just loves you, or he's rageful, sure, he punched the wall, but it's just a reaction, or the way that he punishes you is a natural consequence. His entitlement is right there, and he sees it as fairness because he's up here and you're here. Really notice the hierarchy and the superiority. That's huge, right? This is not a communication problem. That's not what this is at all. With entitled men, harm is justified to them. And I think this is where things get really dangerous, He only yelled because you wouldn't listen. He checked your phone because you were acting suspicious. He only called you names because you kept pushing. What else do you expect, right? He ignored you for days because you needed to learn what happens when you whatever. So he withholds money because you're irresponsible or because women are irresponsible, whatever. He scared you because you made him snap. Do you see all the excuses? And do you see your own relationship in what I'm saying? Once he has an explanation for his own behavior, the harm is justified. And that is the ego-syntonic piece. The behavior does not clash with his self-image. It actually just really supports the story that he's reasonable and you're the problem. And abusive men don't need to deny the behavior. They just need to defend the meaning of it. Now, obviously, plenty of abusive men just deny the behavior. They know that the behavior is received poorly by other people. And this is where they're not delusional because they unequivocally have a sense of what's right and wrong. They're fully aware enough to protect their self-image and to tell other people, she's crazy, she's making that up. But when it comes to you, he may not deny the behavior, but he's going to explain it to you, right? I yelled because you were disrespectful. Okay, I lied, but honestly, if I told you the truth, you were just going to get mad. Okay, I followed you and I stalked you, but it's only because I love you. Whatever. The fight always becomes about interpretation. And he always wants to drag you into his intentions. And then we're not talking about the impact, right? Was it control or was he protecting the relationship? Was he punishing you or was he just taking space? Was he being cruel or was he just telling you the truth? You know how abusive men love to go, what? I can't tell you the truth? You can't be mad at the truth. But really, they're just being absolutely cruel. You're arguing impact, which makes sense. And that is the most important part. But he's arguing his entitlement. He just doesn't see it that way. He'll never call it entitlement. Now, accountability feels very fake sometimes. Ultimately, these men don't take accountability. Okay? They absolutely don't. And this is the same group of men that say that women are not taking accountability, which I've got other videos on. That's a ridiculous concept. But the reason it feels fake is because he might apologize for the outcome, but he's not apologizing for the belief underneath it, right? So he has an impact. You're angry, withdrawn, upset, not giving him the sex that he feels so entitled to. So he's apologizing for how things got here, but not the belief that led him here, because he's not changing his belief. So you hear that in things like, I'm sorry you felt hurt. I shouldn't have said it like that, or I'll try to be better. But the same pattern comes back because he never faced the part of him that felt entitled to do it. So he can regret the fight. He can regret the consequence, that you're pulling away or that he hurt you. But he doesn't believe the behavior was rooted in a problem inside him. So the apology is just the cleanup, the sweeping under the rug, right? But it doesn't actually become a catalyst for change because nothing is different. Now, I'm talking about abusive men. But when you bring in personality disorder traits, you're just going to get more confused because personality disorder traits tend to be deeply tied to self-image. So control to him, it's competence. Superiority to him, I'm not superior, I'm just confident. No, that's not the same thing. Those words are not synonymous. So he thinks, for example, that a lack of empathy is logical. I'm just being logical. I'm not emotional like you women. Manipulation is just a strategy, but it's manipulation. He'll just call it something else. That's why insight is really hard because asking the person to change their behavior, you feel like you're asking him to give up all of the benefits that they believe that protect them or make them who they are. And it keeps them in control. So they keep doing it. But I want to be clear that this doesn't mean that they don't know that they hurt people. It means that it doesn't create the self-reflection that it would create in you. So when you are describing pain, when you're describing, hey, you hurt me, it's not evidence to him that he needs to change or do anything, right? Your tears, manipulative. Your anxiety, you're making it up. Anxiety's for the weak. If you say you're afraid, you're making it up. You're not scared of him. Don't be ridiculous. All the things they say, if you shut down, if you have a loss of desire, if you feel panicked or exhausted, if your body literally just reacts around him, you think this will make him see it. But if he sees your pain as inconvenient or he sees it as disrespectful, and he definitely sees it as weakness, if he thinks you're being manipulative, as so many men say, women manipulate when they're crying, right? Women don't actually have feelings. They're always faking their feelings, right? Tears are manipulative. They're dramatic. Women are so emotional and not logical. It's just proof that you're unstable. So then how could your pain create empathy, right? It becomes just something that he uses against you. And that's why so many women repeatedly say, I showed him how much he was hurting me and he still didn't stop. And yet we have this belief that he doesn't understand. He doesn't know how much he's hurting you. Of course he knows. You yourself are describing all the ways in which he knows and doesn't change. I know this is a little sarcastic, but hear me out. Have you ever said to him, you're hurting me? Has he ever seen tears coming out of your eyeballs? Yes? He knows. He just doesn't care because he's ego-syntonic. And the thing with ego-syntonic abuse is that it makes women blame themselves because the guy sounds so damn convinced, right? He's offended. How could you say that about me? Abusive? You think I'm abusive? My God. You are the problem. You're the one who's making this up. You women will just call anything abuse these days, right? They go crazy. And then you think, maybe I am too sensitive. You see how the gaslighting gets in? Maybe I do overreact. Maybe I'm hard to love, controlling, or asking for too much. They want you to think you're asking for too much. And so you try to explain it differently and you try to become, calmer, clearer. You don't bring it up on a Tuesday. You bring it up on Saturday. You don't bring it up when he's already upset about something else or you can't win. But you start doubting your own reality and that's brutal. It's exhausting psychologically and physically. So getting him to understand is just a trap because you can't create insight from someone who benefits from not having it. Do you know what I mean? You keep trying to produce empathy in someone who is literally going to use empathy against you. You think that he's going to feel uncomfortable about the very behavior that gives him the power that he wants? Absolutely not. It gets him compliance, attention, control, silence, your labor, sex, and another chance. That's the biggest problem. His behavior continues because it works. And it works for him. Your suffering is never going to be enough for him to stop. And this breeds so much traumatic cognitive dissonance because how can he love you and not want to stop this behavior? If I'm saying that he understands, that means he's doing this on purpose? Yes. And in fact, a fabulous book on that topic is called Cruelty by Nature by Dr. Peter Salerno. It's a phenomenal read. It's a short read and a really great one. So real change requires the behavior to become ego-dystonic. It needs to. And that's the key piece. For change to happen, the person has to start experiencing their own behavior as a problem inside themselves, not because you complain, right? And you're always yapping about your feelings. No, he has to see it as a problem and not a problem because you're going to leave him, a problem for himself. A lot of these men suddenly have these epiphanies, right? We think, oh, he gets it now. No, he's doing something different because there's consequences. You're upset, you're leaving him, you're not giving him what he wants. And so he changes, heavy on the air quotes. He's not really changing. A person who really wants to change, they have to really say to themselves, this isn't who I want to be. This is harming people. This hurts my wife and I care about my wife and that's the reason I'm changing. Not so that she doesn't leave me, but so that I'm not harming her or other people. They have to see, you know what? I am entitled. Wow, I do find ways to control you. I have a lack of empathy. I'm very defensive. They have to see it. It takes time, but more importantly, it takes humility. And when there's a personality disorder involved, I don't know that I've ever seen that, right? It takes a willingness to feel shame without dumping it onto someone else. And the thing with personality disorders is a lot of people are like, oh, it's a shame-based disorder. It's one of the most popular quotes. and yet they don't generally feel shame. Narcissists are shameless. Listen to Dr. George Simon talk about the shame. I've recorded content with him before. They are shameless. This whole myth that it comes from shame has no basis in science. Another great book by the same author I referred to earlier, The Nature and Nurture of Narcissism by Dr. Peter Salerno. You learn a lot about all the myths that we learn about these personality disorders. But my point is that they don't actually feel shame. Sometimes they feel remorse or regret, but it's for being caught, for the consequence, not because the behavior is bad. They're not feeling it because they don't have a sense of shame for what they've done. So change is really hard, right? You keep thinking that if he reads the right book, goes to the right therapist, here's the right podcast, he's going to get it. Again, don't send him my videos. All they do is leave garbage comments. All this means, if they change, that they're going to lose their power, control, superiority, and all of their excuses. If he loses his ability to blame you, he has to take accountability. And that is why abusive men resist it so hard. They are invested in exactly what's happening. They are not confused at all. There is a huge difference between discomfort and accountability, right? He might feel uncomfortable when you cry. He might feel unhappy when you leave him, but that doesn't mean accountability. That's not what it is. Watch what happens when the pressure passes, right? You stay, you soften, you come back, you don't leave. Ooh, and then he goes back to the same guy. That's why the cycle goes like this. If you have to threaten him and then something changes, that change won't last because he just did it to avoid discomfort. He's not actually accountable. So your pain is completely inconvenient. And all these videos you're watching on YouTube, right? You're all sucked into all these bitter women on Facebook, right? And TikTok and whatever. He sees all of this as a threat. You learning things, you gaining knowledge. That's a problem for him. So ego-syntonic doesn't mean that he never knows that he hurts you. It means that his behavior feels normal and justified and frankly consistent with how he sees himself. And that's why accountability can feel like you are pulling teeth. It can feel like something he's just never going to take. You know, you are trying to make him feel disturbed, hurt, upset, empathetic by behavior that he experiences as reasonable. You're trying to make him care about impact when he is defending his intent and his entitlement and his control. So stop measuring reality by how convinced he is, because some people are very convinced and very wrong. Hit subscribe if you're not already. And if you are ready to do the work and get out of a relationship like this or heal from a relationship like this, you can work with me one-on-one or inside any of my group coaching programs. I also have an online community called She Rises Collective that I co-host with therapist Shelly Pumphrey. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.